can you compare the civil rights experience in America or try to connect that to what's going on in Israel? And I see that as a huge problem on the left,
yes.
All good-hearted, but completely wrong.
Not all of it good-hearted, I'd say, but I think, yes, I think you identify the allegorical problem quite well. There are people who are looking for analogy in those two situations, and sometimes finding it, not just on the left, by the way. If you read Saul Bellows' novels, and non-fiction too, if you read Mr. Samler's Planet, and then you read his To Jerusalem and Back, you'll see that he has almost exactly the same worries about confrontations with black power forces in Ocean Hills, Brownsville, in New York, or in Chicago, South Side, as he does about the Middle East. He feels it's an entangled question, and registers it, I might say, very, very finely some of the time, and I must say rather crudely. I'm an admirer of his at other times. It's a strange thing that in Northern Ireland, in the slums of Belfast, the Republican slums fly the flag of the PLO, and the Orange Ulster Unionists very often put up the Israeli flag. Conor Cruise-O'Brien wrote a great book, perhaps you've read it, called The Siege, making a comparison between the three sort of post-colonial redoubts in the Third World, Israel, South Africa, and Northern Ireland. All of these very uncomfortable associations to be having. I don't think that that's the problem with the left, however, at the moment. I wish that that's all it was. What's happened with a lot of the left is that they genuinely think that Islamic jihadism is a movement of brown-skinned, disempowered people who've had a hard time. If they're against the United States empire, they must be doing something right. So, and most of these people are fantastically ignorant. They know nothing about it. They've cared not at all to inform themselves. So if you say to them, actually, Al-Qaeda begins in India, Pakistan, as an attempt to destroy the brown-skinned multi-ethnic democracy of India by wrenching Kashmir out of the Indian state and starting a civil war, that it makes war on the other Asian democracies of the Philippines and Indonesia, in all cases trying to build a separate ultra-fundamentalist Muslim state. They know that at all. They just feel it must be owed something. And in several cases, including my old publisher, New Left Books, explicit texts have been produced saying that since the world proletariat turned out to be a bit of a disappointment, it never did what we asked of it, at least now there's an alternative source of power, a mass disenfranchised movement of resentment against. And lately I've noticed that bin Laden's been getting this and playing it back. He's been recommending to people that they read Noam Chomsky, for example. I don't know what Noam thinks when he reads this. And he shouldn't be blamed for it, but they're trying to get more subtle about it too. These people who want homosexuals to be buried alive, who want women to be slaves, who want, you know the story, you know what the Taliban is like, still think they might trick themselves out in some discarded left colors. It's a disgusting business, symbolized in the recommendation of Michael Moore's films by the Al-Qaeda too. Very low cultural level. Ma'am, here's the mic.
Laryngitis. No, it's okay. Thank you for a marvelously elucidative and erudite presentation, Christopher.
Thank you.
My question is, do you think that films such as An Education, which is up for several awards right now, has a subliminal, or perhaps a not so subliminal effect on the American psyche?
I'm sorry to say I don't know the movie you talk about. Movies aren't made for people like me anymore. I don't go.
Oh, maybe.
But if movies in general, well, you know what? I mean, the Passion of the Christ, for example, which I thought, I was amazed that something that was not just anti-Semitic, but was incitingly anti-Semitic, could be shown without protest. Actually had practically no effect. I mean, there were one or two churches in Kentucky put up a sign outside on Sunday saying the Jews killed our Lord. But that was about the limit of it. Most people don't remember now how dangerous it used to be a Jew in Boston on Easter time and be accused of being a Christ killer. Older Jewish people remember it very well. Younger Jews don't, and younger Christians don't. They aren't taught that anymore. It's in a way encouraging. That's what nauseated me about Gibson, doing an end run around this and making sure it got to the Middle East with the ugly stuff put back in. And that's what shows what a little Nazi puke he is. And that's why I don't see how he's allowed to just walk around Los Angeles, if you don't mind my saying so. What is this?
And how serious do you consider Farrakhan's rants and protestations against Jews to be against the Jewish people?
Well, two things about that. I remember once reading an account of, this is years ago, but I'm practically certain it was in a suburb of Los Angeles. There was an outbreak of swastika painting at a Jewish cemetery and on Jewish shops. And of course, huge kerfuffle, headlines, agony meetings, what's happening, all this stuff. They caught the hooligans who'd done it, who it turned out had no idea what a swastika was, didn't know about the Nazi Party, but just knew that if you do that, you always get attention. You know, that upsets people, so let's go do that. Now, I don't think Farrakhan is quite in that category, because obviously he has a problem of belonging to a very debased form of sectarian Islam that takes part in a lot of anti-Jewish paranoia. But again, you see, if he had got up and said at Madison Square Garden, where I was one of only 2 white people in the hall that night, and actually it wasn't at all threatening. It was unpleasant, but it wasn't threatening. But he made a huge tirade against the Jews, and if you remember said, "And I tell you now, Jews, when God puts you in the ovens, it's forever." That wasn't very nice to be sitting in the back when that was going on. But who cares what he says? Suppose he'd said, which would be true, the real enemy of black America is the Irish. They kept us out of the building trades. Their police kicked us around in every city in the country for years. They treated us like muck. They thought they'd become white and look down on us and so on. That would all be quite largely true. Do you think the Irish would give a damn? Of course they wouldn't. If they even heard him say it, they'd say, "Who gives a damn? It's Planet of the Apes. Who is this geezer?" They wouldn't be hurt. No, but the Jews, what? A black guy? After all we've done for the black people? You know? Wail, wail, kvetch, kvetch. There's no crying in Judaism. Actually, unfortunately, there is too much crying in Judaism. So it works. So don't, in other words, don't get too easily hurt. Grow a thicker skin. Don't become insensitive, but stuff like that really is pathetic. And it shows the underdevelopment of his community and the miseducation that they've got from many of their preachers.
I'm afraid I have to...
My dear Armenian comrade. No, I have to recognize a distinguished member of the Armenian Parliament in Yerevan, Mr. Hovhannisyan, whose father is a great ornament of this campus, if I mistake not.
Yes, my father and my professor, Richard Hovhannisyan, who gave me my lowest grade when I was a student here at UCLA. So I'm very happy to be sitting behind the former foreign minister of the Kingdom of Thailand and among this very distinguished audience. Thank you very much for the challenge you gave us. It's not only Jews or anti-Semites who watch the film credits after a movie. It's the Armenians who also look for their IANs to have some sense of identification. I just wanted to ask you, in the example of your own patrol of the frontier between civilization and tyranny, between uniqueness and universality, in the legacy of Daniel Pearl, and that's we're here gathered to give a modern application to that legacy. How do you reconcile the individual pain that each nation feels? The Armenians, as you know, a generation before the Holocaust, were subject to a genocide and a national dispossession. How do we maintain our own identity, our own pain, our own suffering, but at the same time allow for a universal mainstreaming so that the never again is really never again for all of humanity? Thank you.
Well, I'm afraid we can't say never again, because the one bit of the pastor of a Haggadah that I don't have any difficulty with says in every generation it's going to happen. It's going to. There's no question about it. And I've given the reasons why I think that will be true and why it's an honor. And though it's an awful thing to say that in the presence of people who suffered loss,